Now this right here, my friends, is the DJI SDR transmission system. Now, one of the greatest things about this thing happens to be the ecosystem in DJI, and we know with a lot of DJI devices, there's so much versatility in what you can actually do with them. Now, you can actually pair this directly to, your iOS device, straight into it, or you can actually do Wi-Fi, so you don't actually need the receiver. You just have to have the transmitter attached to your camera, and you can go straight to your iOS or Android device. But also, you can attach this directly to the RS4, and then you can actually have this on the RS4, car rigs, having a first AC, you can control it directly through the app as well, which is pretty incredible. Got a lot to get through, so let's get it. So just quickly, DJI did send me this device, but they did not tell me to say anything positive or negative about this device. So the DJI SDR transmission is a video transmission system designed for small and medium-sized film crews. The SDR transmission transmitter has an SDI and HDMI in, 2 USB-C ports, a headphone jack, a link button, an off switch, 4 antennas, and a fan intake and exhaust, and also has an MPF battery slot on the back. Now the receiver is pretty much identical, but it features the SDI and HDMI as outputs. The transmitter and receiver you can get for $309 US each. The phone and iPad holder are $49 each. The USB-C to USB-C cord is $10 each, or you can get the whole combo kit for $549 US. So one of the great things about this transmission device is that you can actually attach it directly to your iPad, and it comes with this iPad holder that has 3/4 20 mounts at the back, and then you've got a 1/4 20 mount at the bottom, so you can actually bring out a light stand if you want, place this on a light stand, or just attach it to something so you're not actually physically holding it. And you can have multiple of these devices if you actually have multiple receivers. So the way that this one works is you've got the receiver, you plug it directly into your iPad with just USB-C, but also there's a phone mount as well. So the phone mount is pretty much identical. You can attach it directly to your phone, but the great thing about this one is that you can go into portrait mode, or you can flick it into a landscape, which is pretty cool. Now there's a second way that you can actually utilize this, and that is pairing the iPad just directly through Wi-Fi. So here, I'm actually controlling the RS4 directly with this. You can see the transmitters at the bottom there, and then this is just connecting directly to the transmitter. And I've actually got a full video feed of what I'm actually seeing. So this is fantastic for these kind of car rigs in this kind of situation, and Wi-Fi strength is going to be perfectly fine because you're going to be sitting most likely in the cabin of the actual car itself. Now, if you are connecting it directly through to the Wi-Fi system, you can only pair 2 devices. So you can pretty much have someone completely controlling this, and then you can have someone with another iPad or an iPhone, Android device, just monitoring it as well, just to make sure that, that the framing and composition's fine, the autofocus is fine, so you have more people on hands, which is kind of cool. But, these ones, like I said, you can have multiple devices, literally just one transmitter, but you obviously just have to buy multiple receivers to be able to have multiple devices attached to the transmitter. So on my particular use case with my car rig is that what I had to do was utilize a transmitter and attach it directly to the car rig somewhere. It just was an extra moving piece that I had to think about, whereas the DJI SDI transmitter, is I could actually attach it directly underneath the RS4. It just makes things so much more simple, more compact, and just easier to utilize. Now, I guess one of the cool things about this car rig system as well is that the responsiveness is really, really good. Utilizing the Force Mobile is fantastic, but I know a lot of people aren't going to be utilizing that, or probably don't like utilizing that. They probably just like utilizing the actual joystick itself, which, is perfectly fine. It just really depends on what you prefer, because, you can just control it like this, keep the iPad nice and steady, and that could be easier for you, depending on what kind of operator you are. Now, if you haven't utilized the DJI app before, this actually gives you controls like zebras, false color, focus peaking, aspect ratio guidelines. You can load in custom LUTs. And obviously, like I showed you before, if you have your gimbal attached to it, you can actually control the gimbal. But you can also hit record on the actual iPad itself. So I'm actually physically recording directly onto just this device. Hit play. And then I can actually play what I've recorded and everything that's on the screen as well. So it can be like a bit of a screen recorder, so you can see all the settings. if you do actually want to replicate those settings in another shoot. Now, one of the interesting thing about this transmission system happens to be the latency. Now, I did test it on my FX6, and my FX6 has SDI out and HDMI out, so I did want to test both of those if there was any difference, but also a test just the Wi-Fi transmission directly through the actual transmitter itself. Now, this is with the FX6 with the HDMI out to the transmitter, and then the receiver is actually going through USB-C to the iPad. And this is the same FX6 with the SDI out to the transmitter, and then the same setup with the receiver to the iPad. And now this is the FX6 with SDI to the transmitter and actually going through Wi-Fi through the app on the iPad. And what you can notice between all three transmission types is very similar results. Now, what you don't want to do is have the HDMI transmission going into your monitor and then daisy chain it directly out to the transmitter, and then that's what sends the signal, because there's going to be a delay from your actual camera itself going into the monitor, and then there's going to be the delay from the monitor going into your transmitter. So the best way to do it is to connect it directly from your camera directly through the transmitter. And now it doesn't have a HDMI out or an SDI out, so you can't daisy chain from your transmitter to your monitor. So you have to have a setup kind of like the FX6 where you have an SDI out and HDMI out, where you can have single signals going to each one of the devices. Now, I understand there aren't going to be many people with the FX6 that have SDI and HDMI outs. Now, this goes with any video transmitter. You're probably going to have to go from HDMI to your monitor, then your monitor to the transmitter, and then that's when you're going to introduce that latency. But because it is really fast, there isn't really that much different anyway, and you're going to be perfectly fine pulling focus. But specifically, if you're just checking shots, and this is for a producer, first AC, a client, this is going to be absolutely perfect. Okay, so the way to actually connect this, all you need to do is swipe across, and you've got this little QR code that I'm going to be scanning. So I'll connect to Raven Eye, I'll scan the QR code. Where is the transmission system? There we are. There we go. It'll ask you to join it, and once it connects, connected successfully, and then this is going to give me the full transmission of exactly what obviously the camera is going to be seeing. So extremely fast, low latency. This is going to be great for a director's monitor, or just having something to review your shots afterwards. So if I hit record, press stop, go thumbnail, and then I can actually review the shots directly on this monitor. So it's so much larger, so much easier to see. I am a long away from where my car is, and I'm still getting signal, which is pretty incredible. I've been walking for 5 minutes now. So definitely line of sight, open field. This thing is fantastic with transmission. It is super strong, not laggy at all. It hasn't dropped out once. But let's check the Wi-Fi in open field. Now, testing the transmission distance in open fields, it performed pretty incredible. I parked my car right down the end of the park and literally walked as far as I could, and then I came to a crossroads and there was no pathway, and it was about 650 meters. This is with the receiver attached directly to the iPad, and then when I actually attached it into Wi-Fi, it was pretty much the same distance. Open field, it's perfectly fine. Now, when I actually had my camera inside my house and I tried to drive down the road, this is where I only got about 200-ish meters. But in saying that, the camera was inside my house, I was inside my car driving. 200 meters is pretty fair, and I don't see a situation where I'm actually going to be utilizing it like this. Now, this could be great for freelancers, specifically people who are in like the corporate scene. If you actually want to have a corporate shoot and sit people down for interviews, this is where this is going to be very useful. Having the iPad attached Wi-Fi directly through to that transmission, because you can give this to the client and they can just, view it while the shoot is actually happening, and they're not just looking directly over your shoulder onto the camera, because as cinematographers, as videographers, there's nothing worse than when a client is actually trying to look over your shoulder onto the screen. It just makes things so difficult. And even if you just have a regular client, specifically in my situation with my sports and gym work, they're not looking at a very small 5-inch screen. This is a relatively large 10-inch, iPad. So I can actually replay the shots directly on here on a larger screen, and also still look at the replay directly on my camera itself. And then I can give this to them. So it just makes things so much more easier and more comfortable in these kind of situations. So overall, this system is really good. I absolutely love it. The latency is really low. The transmission is nice and strong. And then having the ability to work it in with your DJI RS4, or just utilize it as just a regular transmission system with your iPad, your Android device, whatever you're actually utilizing. I just think that this thing is going to be useful for a lot of different situations, definitely in that intermediate sort of range. Standalone videographers may not actually utilize this. It mainly does come down to people working in teams. But like I said, if you are a freelancer that has a client that wants to actually see the shot, this is where things can get really interesting, and apply it in that particular situation. So anyway, my friends, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. I will put a link in the description below if you do want to check this device out. And yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. All right, let's get it.